Hello, everyone. You are very welcome to Zevo Health's Health and Wellbeing at Work 2023 Trends webinar. For those of you who are not familiar with Zevo Health, we are an Irish-owned corporate health and wellbeing provider on a mission to empower people to lead healthier lives by providing engaging and rewarding health and wellbeing solutions. My name is Emma Cooke. I am Zevo's commercial manager, and joining me is my wonderful colleague, Sarah Keane, wellbeing consultant for Zevo Health. For the webinar today, Sarah will be guiding us through the current challenges confronting employee health and wellbeing, forecasted trends for 2023, along with strategic planning and popular approaches for implementing wellbeing programs. So Sarah, I'll hand over to you for a minute.
Hi Emma. Hi everyone, you're very welcome. So just to begin, let's start with taking a look at the current changes that have unfolded in business over the last couple of years. Many companies are dealing with that post-pandemic impact in its various forms, and particularly so many people feeling that financial squeeze with inflation in recent months. We're also seeing globalization with geographically dispersed workforces for those that are working remotely and hybrid, and that brings with it also many challenges. We're seeing the rise of digital business and the subsequent knock-on effect it's having on consumer behavior, as well as the implementation of various technologies in the workplace in many forms. We're seeing the rise of workplace surveillance, for example, for remote workers, again, those who are remote or hybrid, which is completely new. We've never had that before, certainly not at the scale we have it, and we have to look at the consequences of that for employee health and well-being. And then we're also seeing the rise of automation and the integration of AI in workplaces. So these are, as you can imagine, very novel new challenges that have arisen. So as a result, many of the key focal areas in the coming year or so revolve around really seeking out that opportunity with this post-disruptive change, and rather than just seeing it as a challenge and a burden, really seeking out, the positives that come hand in hand with that disruption. Center stage really is the evolution of kind of more conscious workplaces and how that arises through many tiers. First and foremost, through building trust and accountability. We see the rise of diversity, equity, and inclusion, the importance of fostering an organizational culture that has belonging at center stage. We're also seeing sustainability, that conscious ethical business, where we're looking at SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, and your environmental, social, and governance targets for stakeholders, as well as social connection, as you can imagine, again, with the dispersed workforce. In some instances, we're seeing the rise of microcultures and the challenges to create team cohesion. And then all of that summated is really exploring ways to have best practice in order to navigate these new work models. So drawing from that, the forecasted trends for 2023, especially focused in the first 2 quarters, we're seeing a greater focus on broader dimensions of well-being, factoring in, for example, financial well-being much more. So it's no longer just about yoga classes and fruit bowls, but that we are really addressing that holistic, person-centered approach to taking care of your employees. And dovetailing on that, of course, continued focus on mental health. As many of you will be well aware, there's been concerning trajectories there around the increase in burnout, the prevalence of stress, as well as depression and anxiety. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that in a few moments. We're also seeing an increase in the need for personalized intervention, as well as mirroring what's happening digitally in the workplace, that we have digital solutions, as well as all the innovations that are arising in our systems and how we work. But we're seeing how that marries in with our well-being. And then I guess the big part is the systemic and operational review. So really looking at health and well-being policy, which tackles things like leadership, really exploring employee voice, work flexibility, autonomy, and workplace design. So we're looking at, many tiers here.
And just on that, look, some really excellent examples, Sarah, for areas like where businesses can really focus on for 2023. If a company was going to say to you, look, if I was to focus on one or two key points, like where would you really be advising, what would you be advising companies to do in that instance?
Yeah, it is a tricky one, without having full context. I suppose to start with, it's important for an employer to understand a well-being program fits into their overall well-being strategy. And if we were to simplify it, there's kind of three main tiers. You have your endeavors to prevent issues arising for your employees, and a lot of that is that systemic piece that I just mentioned around leadership and operational considerations. We then have the intervention piece, and that's probably what you more typically think of when you think of well-being programs. So things like webinars and various well-being benefits. But then we also have a third pillar, and that's the treatment piece. So when you are supporting your employees in rebalancing. So we offer solutions on all three, but for an employer to suss out where they should begin, there's many different things to consider. I would say a big piece is that mental health piece that I just mentioned, the ISO safety standards. So these are the first global standards to be published to guide employers in how to maintain psychologically safe work environments. And so this, if it hasn't been on an employer's radar, is certainly something to explore in greater depth and be more aware of. And again, it ties in with that kind of deeper systemic approach and really looking at these core factors that are impacting your workers. And of course, there's many internal and external factors that come into play around psychological safety, as you can imagine. And so what we do is to support employers who are interested in going deeper in this to perhaps do even a preliminary audit, or many organizations may do an employee engagement survey, for example, even biannually, including elements of psychological safety to kind of get that pulse check on your employees' well-being, is kind of a key element to then inform you where you might start. That said, if auditing and perhaps that deeper dive isn't accessible or available, particularly maybe for SMEs who maybe don't have that budget, there are these kind of 4 pillars I just mentioned earlier around mental health that are glaring at the moment and really require to be addressed in many, if not all, workplaces. So the 4 pillars to look at, one is cognitive function. So what does that mean? Because some people might not be that familiar with that term. Really, we're looking at the ability to concentrate, focus, decision-making, memory, all of those elements. And research published over the last 2 years indicates that there's, again, an increase in the likes of brain fog and difficulty with name recall and focus and concentration. That's really been heightened as a result of the pandemic. So this is one aspect of mental health you could focus on supporting employees with. I mentioned and then we also have an increase in the prevalence of anxiety, stress, which in chronic situations leads to burnout, and then of course concerning trajectory around depression as well. So you can see on the left-hand side of the slide down there in the corner, Emma, many of the challenges that feed into these mental health issues. And then the buffers that employers can start to put in place are things like flexible work models, the compassionate managerial approach. I'm echoing a lot of what I've just mentioned earlier about looking at the kind of systemic operational factors, but it's also really looking at employee education and peer-to-peer support. And we would see that one of our flagship offerings that support employers with that is our mental health champion. So getting employees involved in supporting each other to improve their mental health.
Yeah, I think certainly kind of year on year, organizations, like mental health is the key pillar of well-being that they want to focus on every year. So, what type of interventions would organizations implement, for each of the kind of areas of mental health that you've listed off there?
Yeah, well, as mentioned, the mental health champion would be one of our most popular and most widely utilized solutions. But in addition to that, we've created solutions that again correspond to those three tiers that I mentioned at the start, that deeper prevention, the intervention piece, and then also the treatment. And so how that looks, we have things like managed services for employers who perhaps want to have clinicians visit on site and support their employees on a more consistent basis. And then we have consultancy and professional services. So again, as mentioned earlier, that is what we more traditionally think around employee well-being, the trainings, the workshops, courses, and programs, as well as consultancy around drafting policy and auditing. And then we also have technology, because as I mentioned, we're seeing that trend, that move towards increased digitalization and the personal touch. And so the Zevo Health app really aims to be progressive in that area and support employees with kind of personalized well-being support, including the mental health support you've just asked about.
Okay. And like in an organization, like if deeper systemic, issues do exist, can, even if we look at just professional services, can hosting a solution like a training session actually really make a difference in an organization?
It's a brilliant question, and I think it's something that is quite prevalent at the moment. People dealing with massive workloads and perhaps feeling overextended, and then there's this almost token webinar that they feel is offered. But actually, context is everything, and how things are offered and delivered in a kind of coherent, meaningful way, and in a way that stacks supporting the employees over time, then it certainly can be helpful. It also will greatly depend on the topic that's being addressed, which I'll talk about in a moment. But this illustration kind of gives an employer a sense of, yes, a standalone training can help to increase employee awareness around something. But then if you perhaps offer a workshop in conjunction with that, or even an event, and give them the ability or opportunity to integrate that information and apply it and maybe build some skills, even better. And then if you want to support that with a deeper dive, perhaps with a course that really dives into that topic over a certain period of time, and allowing again to increase the integration of the information and helping the employee to reflect and really apply it to their life circumstances, even better. Personalizing it, taking to the next level, as I mentioned, maybe with clinicians, day clinics on site. And I would just flag with that we're also seeing a move away from just the therapeutic mindset around day clinics. So for a long time, especially with things that are sensitive like mental health, where there can be stigma, people maybe felt afraid or shy about reaching out for that therapeutic support. And so we're seeing that the offering of the likes of health coaching, which is maybe less clinical in orientation, but still incredibly helpful for employees who maybe might not consider themselves in a kind of a red flag area, can be really helpful. And then lastly, I suppose for the sustenance and to maintain the consistency, having something like a digital platform can really help your employees, because they have that continued support at the tip of their fingertips throughout the year. I just briefly mentioned, again, answering your question there around a standalone training, does it really make a difference? It also depends on the topic and what's being addressed and how deep the session goes. And then also, is, for example, training on healthy eating being delivered to the employees, but then you look at what's available in the canteen and there's a mismatch between the awareness that you're giving your employees and then the choice architecture of the workplace. So it's just about becoming, more aware of all of these elements and how when you pull them together, they have this synergistic effect and can really help each other. So it's not to discount one over the other, but really see how they can all have their value when done in a logical kind of order of operations. So I've just listed a few of the talks just to give a sample of that holistic well-being that we mentioned at the very start, and then the workshops that dovetail nicely with some of those talks, and then the deeper dive courses that we have, and then a sample of the day clinics. So there's lots of information on the website. If people want to peruse the website and see more of the titles under the various domains.
Yeah, that's great. And like if an organization, let's say, even if they were looking at talks or workshops, Sarah, if they wanted to kind of sequence those in a nicer way, or, if a company was to plan a program, where would they start with that?
Yeah, I mean, it can be really daunting, particularly for companies perhaps who don't have any in-house specialists in this area. And so to meet that need, we have created these frameworks for employers to utilize that would map out, for example, according to various budgets, a sample of a meaningful sequence of trainings, some for general health, and then we also have more specified programs that maybe tackle things like structural health issues. So if an employer sees there's a prevalence of work-related musculoskeletal disorders and challenges employees are having, or indeed mental health issues, if there's a lot of stress leave, for example, we have a mental health program. And then we also have a metabolic health one for the research indicated, again, among certain demographics, that there was a lot of weight gain, and that can come, of course, with much impact on people's not only their physical health, but their mental health as well. So we have various programs mapped out, and just to kind of give you an idea, across the different structures, we have from very basic ones that would just be 4 trainings across the year, to those that are a little bit more comprehensive with a 12 training sequence, and then 12 trainings with day clinics that complement the content of the trainings, and then a whole host of bespoke add-ons that an employer can elect to fit into their program.
Some lovely examples of the different types of programs that companies can go for there, Sarah. But I suppose a big question we would often get asked is, okay, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to implement a program. Like, how do I know it's going to work?
Yeah, well, we've created a program success guide with tips for employers on how to optimize engagement and how to get employees involved in the various initiatives that they run throughout the year, and also then helping them to have better alignment between the trainings and the interventions they're offering and the structures that are in place in the workplace, like I mentioned, so that there isn't that kind of conflict, that one thing is being told and then the other, then the environment is kind of working against it. So we've created as I said, this program success guideline book. Just if an individual or an employer isn't on board with running a program right now, what we would say is just really getting clarity around knowing where the gaps are and closing that gap between what you think is the problem and what actually is, because oftentimes there can be a mismatch. So getting that both quantitative and qualitative feedback to paint a clearer picture for you as an employer around what the real issues are for your employees, getting them on board, starting, whether it's wellbeing champions or a wellbeing steering committee, to really give them the reins and the autonomy around implementing wellbeing programs that actually are going to be most meaningful to them. So that's certainly a resource that can be helpful. I would just add to that, Emma, like again on that whole technology conversation, that for some companies, especially larger companies, for example, where the logistics of running a program, it might appeal, but the reality of getting people aligned to be able to attend workshops at certain times or trainings at certain times might be more challenging. This is where the likes of the Zevo Health app can also really come in handy, where again, employees at the touch of their fingers have a more personalized access to things like master classes and personal challenges. Is there anything you'd add to that, Emma?
Yeah, well, I think, even just to talk about the core elements of it. So I think, on the next slide there. So I suppose really Wellbeing 360 has been designed to be your all-in-one holistic digital wellbeing solution. So we focus on those three core elements, which you see there. So Zevo Therapy, this is a 24/7 video counseling coaching service, providing in the moment support to your employees to really help them deal with any personal or professional difficulties that they could be facing. Zevo Challenges, then that element really seeks to build connections across the business through fun and friendly team and company-wide challenges. So it's an excellent way to engage your employees, boost morale, and just really make health and fitness fun for all involved. And then finally, Zevo Academy. So this is an inspiring e-learning hub, and encouraging employees to broaden their awareness and just learn new skills to promote healthy behavior change. So the Academy also acts as a great support to digital therapy. So for example, the counselor can recommend a science-based course, for example, cognitive behavioral therapy, or really any other relevant resources to really enhance the individual's therapeutic experience.
And so I just say on the Zevo Academy, a lot of the content in the masterclasses is very similar to the live trainings that we would create. So it's just a different format and delivery, and supporting the employees to have that enhanced accessibility to it, and also have the kind of free choice to explore themes they're most interested in. So just to note that. And just around the challenges, I suppose the big one to mention would be the Fittest Workplace Challenge, which is again one of our biggest and most impactful brief interventions. It happens over 2 weeks. And again, it's just one of these novel, light interventions that actually addresses a lot of those challenges we mentioned earlier on. Things around the microcultures and the team cohesion that can be challenging. So because it's delivered digitally, it doesn't matter where your employees are geographically, they can all band together and work as a team for this challenge. So that really has that kind of social connection and novelty piece, as well as on a physical level, really inspiring people to move more, which has a whole host of benefits, both physically and mentally, which we're all so much more aware of now in recent years. So just to mention that one too, Emma.
Yeah, exactly. And just for our listeners today, like if you haven't heard of Ireland's Fittest Workplace, it's an intercompany challenge where you are battling it out to win the title of Ireland's Fittest Workplace. So as Sarah mentioned, it's a 2-week challenge. It is all tracked and managed via the Zevo Health app. And just even, some stats reported from 2022. So 94% reported the challenge had significant value for the company. 91% reported, improvement in employee morale during the challenge. And 87% reported a widespread employee interest in actually participating in the challenge, which is a great one. And of course, 89% reporting that the challenge motivated them to move more. So really, it kicks off in March 2023, and it's just a really great way, a fun way to kind of bring employees together and have a little bit of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So from my side anyway, Emma, that's kind of the key high level overview of the upcoming trends. We are currently underway in a piece of research on the Wellbeing survey, our annual Wellbeing survey, and we're going to have a much more detailed report that's going to be published towards the end of the year that will also support employers in mapping out the year ahead and kind of highlighting key things to focus on.
Great. And just for our listeners, Sarah, the report, is that, how would people access that? Would people have to join the Zevo Health newsletter to get access, or is it public on the website?
It will be published on the website, but also certainly to keep up to speed, joining for the newsletter would be recommended. Yeah.
Okay, great stuff. Okay. Thank you so much for your time today, Sarah, and thanks so much for bringing us through the kind of key trends for 2023. For the audience members, thank you very much for your time. Should you have any questions, please send them on to hello@zevohealth.com. Have a lovely day.